Good morning, everyone. Kris here with Inspired Energy, and joining me again this morning, Hartwell. Good morning, Hartwell.
Good morning, Kris. Good morning, everyone.
Yes, and so this morning we're going to dive into one of those things that I always wondered about for the longest time and never asked you, and that was what does the point one, point two, all these lines mean? So, what is the purpose behind the lines in human design?
Well, remember one of the key
Photobomb.
one of the key aspects of human design is I-Ching. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the 64 gates, lines, they all come from the I-Ching. And the I-Ching, they talk about 64 hexagrams. And hex, of course, means six, which means that every
It looks like Oreo's running the show this morning.
oh, you want to be on my lap, but I mean, this is not a lap moment.
Uh-huh.
Um, so there's six lines, and you could almost think of it, and each line expresses the energy over the overall hexagram slightly differently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the one is you could almost think of it as a house metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
The first line is the foundation. The second line is the first floor windows. The third is a transition between the floors. The fifth, why am I not thinking what the fourth
Four.
is? I'll skip over that for a minute. The fifth is like the upstairs windows, and the sixth is like the roof.
Mm-hmm.
So with the one, you have the foundation, and that's where we're going to start. So for the next
Six
for the
weeks.
next 6 weeks, we're going to be talking about these lines in greater detail.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to start with number one. So tell us about line number one. What is it and how does it function? What's its purpose?
Sure. And I mean, if you want to contextualize this for yourself, have your chart handy when we have these chats. Um, we've talked a little bit about the profile where I probably, talked about this just a wee bit
Mm-hmm.
before, but now we're going in greater depth. So your profile is made up of the lines. If you look at the sun and earth on both sides of your chart, there's the gate number and there's the line number. So your profile is from the line number. So for instance, Kris, you're a 1-3 profile, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
a 5-1 profile, both which have the one in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things to track for yourself. Look to see what your profile is. Does it have a one in it? If it doesn't have a one, look at other aspects of your design. Count up the number of planetary activations where you have ones. And that can help you contextualize this. But the one seeks foundation. But, at the beginning of our life, we don't necessarily have that foundation. And so
Mm-hmm.
the one is driven by insecurity to explore the foundation of things, to investigate it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is this need to deal with the fear by absorbing yourself in things that you study. So there can be I'm busy, don't bother me kind of vibe if somebody has a lot of ones. It's also deeply empathic towards others, so um, people with strong ones take in a lot of information from others.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that insecurity can be cause the person to hide, to want to blend in. It's like, okay, I'm not secure. I'm going to blend in. I'm going to be a bit of a chameleon. I'm not going to. I don't want people to know my insecurity. So there is an aspect of the one that is like that. It hides.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, the hiding won't resolve the insecurity, right? So, um, for those people who are strong in the ones, there can be a real sense of there can be a real sense of insecurity and inferiority.
Mm-hmm.
But when the one has investigated enough and discovered the foundation, then the one becomes the energy of authority in the world. So the energy of, I've studied it in and out and now I'm an authority about it. This insecurity shifts into a sense of knowing what being self-assured about, the studies that have informed your experience. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I thought it was interesting that you said focus on one thing at a time. So, in order to establish that foundation, you said focus on one thing at a time and self honesty. So, yeah, it seems kind of funny when you say that because it's rather difficult to focus on one thing at a time, um, especially when you run a business or like, I mean, you can make the business about one thing, but sure, there's a thousand things to do in a day. So when you mentioned go away, I'm busy, don't bother me, that's very applicable to that line.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, it's just that self-absorption, that one at a time experience,
Hmm.
facilitates the investigation, I think.
Hmm.
Of course, if you have a one in your profile like you and I do,
Hmm.
it's going to be more central. But we all have, even those who don't have one in their profile have ones. We all have, most of us have at least, a couple of activations in all of the lines.
Yeah, but it's when it becomes prevalent. So like you have nine or
Hmm.
10, or it's then it is a major part of functioning. Because what I was going to say is with the one, um, there's this, because I have a lot of ones. So it's about, for me personally, the fear is more about, like making a mistake and hurting other people, which makes sense when you talk about the empathic side of it. Because that's how I feel like I'm afraid when I move into that. I'm afraid of doing something that the repercussions of that will affect others, right?
Mm.
But then if you're supposed to move into authority, then that's what you're meant to do, right? So it's kind of like this, paradoxical
Do you see
situation.
that as a shame? Like if you don't do things perfectly, or what, I don't remember the word you used, but if you don't do it right, would
Hmm.
there be shame with that?
I mean, there could be, but it's more about hurting somebody. It's
Oh,
more
okay.
about causing them um, discomfort or pain, or, you know, causing them to have troubles, or, whatever that was. Because I always found it was all about, oh, I don't want that person to hurt. So let me fix that for them. Let me,
Mm. Hmm.
yeah. So it's all about that part of it. I
So it's not so much that you. I was wondering if it were part of the three, which we haven't gotten to, but the three
Mhm.
can. Um, the three makes mistakes. It's a trial and error line, and
Mhm.
so there can be a sense of, oh, I don't want to screw up.
Mhm. But it's
But
because you.
here the emphasis is for you. It's more on, I don't care for me whether I screw up. I care if it impacts other people in a way that's not going to be
Yeah,
good.
I think that's what I'm
Mm.
saying. Yeah, I care whether I screw up, but it's not on me. It's because it's the effects, it's the repercussions of doing that. How am I affecting those around me when I do, right?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and we talk about discernment and having discernment, and knowing whether something's yours or not yours. But even if it's yours, you can still have that effect on people. And it's about releasing yourself of that responsibility instead of taking on responsibility for everything. And I think that's then that becomes the burden, and then the shame and the guilt and like all of
Mm.
those things, right? So for me, especially, my expression would be that I tend not to try and give up on things if it's going to hurt others, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but
It does, and it's interesting because you and I, in some of our conversations
mm-hmm,
outside of this, we were talking about self-possessiveness and how that
mm-hmm,
was a strong concept for both of us, and that's related to the one.
mm-hmm,
It's I guess my experience with the one is because I have 10 of them and you have 9. So both of us, that's an unusual number. If you have more than 5 in
mm-hmm.
a line, um, then that's quite a bit.
Because I noticed there's two expressions, like the authority and the creator, right? So when you talk about you and I, like I see two sides of it. I see me on the authority side and you on the creator side. Like,
Mm.
you know what I mean? Like, I think there's different expressions of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to these. And
Mm-hmm.
what I'm going to be trying, what I'm seeking to do for myself, and hopefully conveying at least somewhat for our listeners, is that these are like universal themes that run under all our behaviors. And so if you can start to tune into the feeling of these lines, then you start to get a natural feel for
Mm-hmm.
the dynamics that are working their way out amongst
Mm-hmm.
humans. So the sense of authority, if if the fear and insecurity of not knowing finally gives way through study and investigation, it turns into a strength. It turns into a sense of self-possessiveness. It turns into a sense of authority.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it gives us a bit of a guideline to say, okay, where do I need to go with this energy? And I mean that's exciting. I mean that where I put in our notes here, um, a lot of security consciousness, self-consciousness arises with this. But at weak can turn into a strength, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the way we connect, the way the one connects with others is there's a pursued or pursuer dynamic. And
Mm-hmm.
you will see it's hard to understand just what that would mean, but we're gonna talk about all the others too. How do you connect with others? You pursue them or they pursue you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of subtlety here.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I would say my experience of the one is I do wrestle with that sense of inadequacy a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is one of the things I'm most conscious about in myself and try and work,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to work with all the time. And it's probably one of my key dynamics, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the whole idea of the ugly duckling, or which is so one-ish, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, feeling not good enough,
Mm-hmm.
that's very much a one thing. And I am always studying things. I am always investigating things.
Mm-hmm.
And so um yeah, the one is very much. And there was an interesting point that my research brought forward into my consciousness. The one is not so honesty towards others isn't such a big problem for the one.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's not what's really relevant. What's relevant is how honest are you with yourself?
Mm-hmm.
So um, the one that's a theme for the one. It's like I need to be honest with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the theme of honesty or dishonesty is not really a theme towards others. It's more about um, investigation into yourself.
Right. And so when you were talking about for yourself, it's like always about study and, diving into things. Can it also be expressed through experience versus study? So then there's those of us who are always looking for the experience versus, actually diving into a book and researching things. It's about just actually experiencing it. Can it express itself that way?
Oh, for sure. I don't think learning through books is the only way to study or investigate things. You could
Yeah.
be a detective, an investigator. I'm going to examine my experience. I'm going to have as many experiences as possible.
Hmm.
And if you have that attitude of, on some level, looking for something, you know, or wanting to be absorbed in something, because you could be really very much absorbed in an experience.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
do you have,
mean,
oh, go ahead.
I'm wondering if you have any. Um, I've listed your activations that are in the first line there. Do you have any specific examples that you would want to point to?
Well, I don't know. I think that the 40, the aloneness, right, is that you're meant to be alone. Um, but then the fear of being alone for me was always a thing based on, my experiences from being a child and the experiences that I had, right? So that I can relate to.
Or do you enjoy your solitude or not?
Depends. Sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, right? Like there's after having, being around a lot of people all day, yeah, I can't wait to be alone. But if I'm alone for long periods of time, then it's like, oh, I don't like this anymore. I'm bored or, yeah.
Well, for myself, I would say that I actively enjoy solitude.
Hmm.
Certainly, there's times when I need people as well, but I mean, I actively enjoy solitude
Hmm.
and my own process. When I'm in my best states of mind, that the investigation in solitude is
Hmm.
very nurturing.
Yeah. And I would say also the saying yes. So there's a fear of saying yes because then I'm committed and I can't change my mind, right? So that's how that would express itself. So I say yes to a lot of
Mm.
things and get overwhelmed, but I'm also afraid to say yes to it because then I'm committed and I have to do it and I can't say no or I can't back out. And I think that's like a fear of commitment or something like, yeah.
Well, fear of commitment certainly is part of the shadow of the 29, which is the
Hmm.
gate of saying yes. But
Yeah.
another way to look at it might be to say that you are investigating in this lifetime what it
Hmm.
means to commit to something.
Hmm.
And because you're still investigating it, like on what basis do you make a commitment? On what basis do you say yes?
Hmm.
Because you haven't yet maybe fully figured that out, there's a nervousness, i.e., a fear and
Hmm.
insecurity around making a commitment.
Yeah.
But as you continue that exploration, you come to understand in a very significant and clear way and have a sense of self possessiveness around, when I say yes to something, I know that it's right for me.
Hmm.
So remember, it's like you are investigating what it means to commit.
Hmm.
And you are investigating with gate 40, the gate of aloneness. What does it mean to be alone?
Hmm.
What does it mean to be in solitude? So um, you are investigating those things, and the insecurity around it is simply part of the first lineness of it.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, for myself, I would say, I have, for instance, the gate of self expression, which has to do with creativity. I have it in line one.
Hmm.
And I'm still trying to figure out, what does it mean to be creative? I'm insecure in my creativity. I don't have confidence in my own creativity. And so I'm investigating that.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So, is there anything else you want to say about line one before we wrap up?
No.
Okay.
We've said it all. We've said it all.
Okay.
I would just remind people that um, to think about taking the human design class that I'm offering mid-October. It's going to be, we're going to be looking at all the basics, so that you can have some familiarity with the system that will start you off and start to give you confidence to think about these concepts. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be interactive, and you'll learn more about yourself, of course, that you can apply to your own understanding of your own body graph.
Right.
There were
And
two
then
things
the
that I
other,
was supposed to be talking about, wasn't there?
yeah, just reminding people that you're going to be away next week. So we won't be having a
Oh,
show. It'll be the week after. And that's the week that your course starts. Yeah. So,
yeah, the week my course starts, we will have a class, but next week we won't.
yes, because you're going on
Yeah,
holidays. You're taking a break. Yes.
yes, indeed.
All right. With that, we'll say God bless. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks with line two. All right. See you later.